Learning intervals is the key to understanding how melodies and harmonies are constructed. They're also key for training your musical ear. So what is an interval? An interval is simply the distance between two notes. When I show you what these intervals are, you really need to find a way to internalize them. In other words, I recommend you connect with them on an emotional level. I'll explain how to do this, but this is a necessary step in my opinion. Otherwise, you may just look at these intervals as boring numbers, and in my opinion, they will be harder to stick in your memory. Here's a quick glance at some key intervals. Perfect unison, which is 0 half steps, aka the same note. The minor second, which is 1 half step. The major second, 2 half steps. Minor third, 3 half steps. Major third, 4 half steps. Perfect fourth, 5 half steps. Tritone, 6 half steps. Perfect fifth, 7 half steps. Minor sixth, 8 half steps. Major sixth, 9 half steps. Minor seventh, 10 half steps, major seventh, 11 half steps, and the perfect octave, which is 12 half steps. Perfect intervals are called perfect because they have been historically known for sounding the most consonant. According to Oxford Languages, consonance is a combination of notes which are in harmony with each other due to the relationship between their frequencies. And dissonance is a tension or clash resulting from the combination of two disharmonious or unsuitable elements. So to put this simply, consonance sounds pleasing and like a release, and dissonance sounds like tension or clashing of notes. A perfect fourth did not sound consonant harmonically in Western classical music, however. What do I mean by this? Well, a melodic interval contains two notes being played one at a time. A harmonic interval contains two notes being played simultaneously. Here's an example. A good way to understand major intervals is that they come from our major scale, and minor intervals come from our minor scale, with the exception of one interval which I will discuss. For example, if you remember our C major scale from my last lesson, this scale contains all of the natural notes in Western music. We have C, D, E, F, G, A, and B, and then the scale repeats starting at the octave C. If I played the first C, then played it again, we have what's called a perfect unison. Think of unison as meaning same. Then from C to D, we have a major second. From C to E, we have a major third. From C to F, we have a perfect fourth. From C to G, we have a perfect fifth. From C to A, we have a major sixth. From C to B, we have a major seventh. And from C to C, we have a perfect eighth or perfect octave. Let's look at the C minor scale now. We have C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, and C. From C to C again, we have a perfect unison. From C to D, we have a major second again. From C to E flat is a minor third. From C to F is again a perfect fourth. C to G is again a perfect fifth. C to A flat is a minor sixth. C to B flat is a minor seventh. And C to the octave C again is a perfect eighth or a perfect octave. Whoa! So the minor scale has a major second? Why isn't it called a minor second? Because as I mentioned, a minor second is 1 half step apart, and a major second is 2 half steps / 1 whole step apart. The natural minor scale starts with a whole step, remember? Wait, so where do you see a minor second? There are minor second intervals within the minor scale, like from D to E flat or G to A flat. Also, that tritone one you said, where do you see those? Well, there are other scales and modes where you can see these intervals as well, but I'll get to that later. But for now, I want to go back to each of these that I showed you earlier and go through each one by one. As I said before, we need to create ways to internalize these intervals so that we recognize them when we hear them and play them. But these methods are how I remember these intervals. You may need to make them your own, but here's a good guideline to use. Let's start with the perfect unison. It's easy for me to remember because I just think of unison meaning the same. Then we have the minor second. Where have we heard this interval before? You may recognize this interval from the theme of Jaws, that old shark movie. How about the major second? I think of this as sounding bluesy. You also hear it in Happy Birthday. Technically, Happy Birthday starts with a perfect unison, then goes to the major second. The minor third. I think of this as the start of Smoke on the Water by Deep Purple. The major third. I think of this as a doorbell ringing. The perfect fourth. Ever heard of Here Comes the Bride? What about Smells Like Teen Spirit? The tritone. Ever heard the Simpsons theme? The perfect fifth. How about the Star Wars theme? Also, if you play guitar, ever heard of a power chord? This two-note chord is a perfect fifth interval played harmonically / at the same time. The minor sixth. Ever heard By the Way by the Red Hot Chili Peppers? The major sixth. I think of the NBC theme. The minor seventh. I think of another Chili Peppers tune like Can't Stop. The major seventh. I like to think of this from a Blink-182 song. Now, of course, in this example, it starts with a perfect fifth technically, then a major third. But I can still hear that major seventh interval. And with the perfect octave, I could recognize this easily as just the same note, but higher in pitch. But if any of you 90s / early 2000s people remember this song, figure out your own ways to remember these intervals. Homework assignment. Oh. Any songs you listen to from now on, try to identify a few intervals in the melody of these songs. If you have to slow them down to hear them, that's okay. Also, it's good to sing these intervals, even if you're not a great singer like me. It's good to sing them up and down. Major third, major third. That was an example of me singing up a major third from a certain note and then down a major third from that same note. If it's too hard to sing it at first without any reference, it's good to use your instrument too to give you a good reference. Surge! Does it stop there? No. We have ninth intervals, for example C to the next D an octave up. We have 11th intervals and 13th intervals and variations on those as well. But I just want to help you understand the concept of these first before getting into more extensions. Now here's the rule for intervals when writing them out. This is for all the nerds out there. C to G, we know, is a fifth interval because C is the first letter, D is the second letter, E is the third letter, F is the fourth letter, and G is the fifth letter. So like I said before, C to G is a perfect fifth. But what is C to G flat? Well, it's still a fifth interval because G is the fifth letter, right? But what kind of fifth is it? It's not a perfect fifth. We call this a diminished fifth, which actually is the tritone interval. G flat is 6 half steps away from C. Now let's look at C to F. We know this as a perfect fourth. But what is C to F sharp? Wait, this is also a tritone? It's the same tritone, but it's not a diminished fifth because we don't have C to G flat. We have C to F sharp. We call this interval an augmented fourth. When you have a half step above a perfect interval, it's augmented. When you have a half step below a perfect interval, we call this diminished. But they have to use the same letters. Now here's a tricky one. We know that C to E is a major third, and C to E flat is a minor third. What is C to E sharp? Well, it sounds like a perfect fourth, C to F, but it's a third because we have an E, not an F. We call this an augmented third because it's 1/2 step above the major interval. Now let's go back to C to E flat. This is a minor third, right? But what about C to E double flat? Search. You can have double flats? Yep. And double sharps. So C to E double flat just sounds like C to D, the major second. But it's still technically a third because we have an E. So this is called a diminished third because it's 1/2 step below the minor interval. Okay, I'll give this a rest for now. What's the purpose of learning these? Well, that's a great question. There has to be a better use for them than just having fun with letters and numbers and labeling the first interval of happy birthday as a major second. Well, when we talk about ear training, learning these intervals is key. Here's an example. If I'm learning a song by ear, these intervals will help me learn the song without reading the sheet music. For example, if I just listen to this melody for the first time, well, I may have to find the first note on my instrument as a reference. But I know that the two intervals were a minor second down and then a minor second back up. Then I know that there was a perfect octave going down after that. So I can learn this by ear instead of relying on the sheet music. I can also do this with chords, which I will discuss in more depth in the next lesson. But if I hear these 4 chords, I'm just going to find the root note of the first chord. Okay, then I know it went a perfect fourth down, a major second down, and a perfect fifth back up. I'm going to discuss later how I do this even easier by ear. There are more uses for intervals, but I'll stop the video here, because I'm sure people who are just learning this are getting bombarded with a lot of new information. Next lesson I will discuss what triads and chords are, and how a lot of these concepts so far come together to create music. If you like what you saw, subscribe. If not,